Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're plunging into a topic that, well, it shapes almost every corner of our modern world, especially for college students: social media. We're going to unpack some truly insightful research. It's from the paper Social Media Effect in Academia by Fakai, Aliou, Abgulaki, and Yusuf. So our mission for this deep dive, it's really to cut through the noise, and reveal the intricate, sometimes kind of surprising ways social media impacts academic life. You might feel like you know this landscape pretty well, but we're going to get into the specific findings and the underlying theories that really illuminate the why and the how behind its pervasive influence. Are students actually harnessing these powerful platforms to supercharge their learning, or are they just getting tangled in this huge web of distraction? Let's explore what the research actually tells us. Okay, so to really get a handle on the impact here, we first need to understand what we're even talking about. When we say social media in this specific context, the sheer presence of digital technology has just fundamentally transformed how we interact. And higher education is certainly no exception there. These platforms aren't just some sort of add-on anymore, right? They become integral.
That's a really crucial distinction.
Yeah.
The paper highlights a core definition that's important here. Social media covers basically mobile and web-based technologies. And they're designed for these highly interactive platforms. So think of it less like a one-way broadcast like old media and more as a dynamic ecosystem where people, communities, they actively share, co-create, discuss. They even modify user-generated content, kind of like Wikipedia, but for everything. It's that constant fluid interaction that really sets it apart.
Right. And it's not just, one or two big platforms we're talking about either. The research really emphasizes how incredibly diverse these tools are. And they're all woven into the fabric of educational environments now. We're talking everything from WhatsApp, Facebook, Twitter,
Yeah.
to maybe less obvious ones like Google+, Flickr, WeChat, LinkedIn, and even those specialized flipped classroom tools. It's like a vast interconnected digital campus.
Exactly. A whole digital campus. And what's particularly striking here is that this isn't just about casual social chatting. Not at all. The research really stresses that these platforms play a vital role in promoting collaboration among instructors, students, other stakeholders, everyone involved. They're actively shaping how students learn, influencing teaching methods, and even driving the very process of constructing knowledge itself. It's a much more purposeful and integrated role than maybe many people initially assume.
Okay, so with that sort of broad understanding of its presence, let's pivot a bit, because while the headlines often scream about distractions and negativity, it's certainly not all doom and gloom, is it? Where does this research show social media truly empowering students, in their academic journey? What are the significant upsides highlighted in these studies?
Absolutely. There's definitely a powerful positive side to this. One key insight is that social media isn't just about sending messages back and forth. Researchers have found it's a powerful space for building identity. Students aren't just communicating, they're actively shaping who they are online. They're exploring different parts of themselves, forming their social networks. And this, in turn, really impacts how they learn and engage with, well, everything. And beyond just identity, these platforms reflect a pretty fundamental shift towards modern learning environments. We're seeing this move towards more interconnected, collaborative, and flexible education. It's often characterized by digital multitasking and a greater sense of student autonomy. Students can now sort of dictate more of their own learning paths and connect with resources and their peers in ways that just weren't possible before.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Especially when you think about today's student, they grew up with this tech. The customizable nature of these platforms also really stands out in the research. It offers incredible opportunities for self-expression, right? And maybe deeper engagement in the learning process itself. It's about making learning feel, I don't know, personal and relevant.
Precisely, exactly. And this personalization, it extends into direct feedback and communication too. Imagine a platform where students can publicly evaluate and discuss campus life in real time. Things like institutional policies, specific classes, professors, the administration, even other students. This gives a level of transparency and immediate feedback that traditional, slower methods just can't match. It helps foster a more responsive educational environment, potentially. And it's definitely not a one-way street either. Educators are increasingly using all sorts of tools, Skype calls, email, social media platforms, to interact with students in online and blended learning settings. This really expands the reach and the flexibility of how education is delivered and supported. It helps break down those old geographical and time barriers.
Okay, so we're talking about more than just talking about school online. It's about actually doing schoolwork, right? With significant collaboration and resource sharing.
Yes, exactly. Studies confirm this. They show how social media naturally fosters discussion and shared learning. just by making it super easy to share and search for content. This gives students immense flexibility in meeting their educational needs.
It really does seem to dissolve many of those old, rigid barriers of traditional education. And this next insight, this really challenges a conventional approach many might think of first. The study argues that simply banning these platforms, that isn't the answer at all.
Right.
Because technology has just so deeply penetrated student communication in their daily lives. Prohibiting these tools is seen as like severing an essential relationship with technology itself. It's not about elimination, it's about optimization, thoughtful integration.
That's a critical point. Institutions need to work with rather than against these student habits and tools.
Right, but okay, with all this connectivity and opportunity, there are definitely significant concerns, things that demand our attention. What are the major pitfalls, the risks that the research uncovers that could, derail academic success or even well-being?
You've hit on a vital point there. It really is a double-edged sword, no question. The sheer pervasiveness, just how much social media is around. It raises considerable concerns about potential addictive tendencies among students. A lot of students show signs of dependency, feeling that irresistible urge to check, to update their profiles. Sometimes, often, at the expense of other, more crucial activities like studying.
Yeah, I can see that. Imagine trying to write a complex essay, but every few minutes you feel that pull to just quickly check your social feed.
Exactly. That's a very real cognitive load. It's a significant distraction. And this leads directly to the issue of just sheer time consumption. Research has found an alarming amount of time undergraduates spend online, particularly on platforms like Facebook and Twitter, often just on their smartphones. And this constant engagement, as you can imagine, it can significantly detract from valuable academic time. It impacts everything from study hours to concentration, even sleep.
So, if I'm understanding this correctly, it's not just about lost hours here and there. It's about a fundamental erosion of the time students actually need to dedicate to their main academic goals. That must be a huge concern for universities and colleges.
Oh, absolutely. A massive concern. One study specifically warned that this rising trend of social networking fixation, it can detrimentally affect students' academic lives, their social lives, or personal lives if it's left unaddressed. And other research consistently links internet addiction with decreased academic performance and also compromised emotional well-being, which is really worrying. For instance, observations have shown students displaying obsessive behavior, spending excessive amounts of time online, sometimes even during lectures.
Wow, during lectures.
Right. Yeah. That's a direct measurable impact on the learning environment itself. And then there's the critical concern about inappropriate conduct. The anonymous or semi-anonymous, sometimes unmoderated nature of online interactions can lead to problems. Private relationships formed maybe outside the classroom might spill over, cause issues. Users might engage in discourteous, disrespectful language, profanity, vulgarity, even harassment, often without proper oversight. Plus, the circulation of sexually explicit or hate-based material poses significant risks. Risks to privacy, to safety. It creates a really challenging environment for both students and institutions to navigate.
So, okay, here we have this tool that's almost indispensable for communication, but it also brings with it these significant challenges: dependency, inappropriate behavior. It's truly like walking a tightrope for students and institutions, trying to leverage the benefits while safeguarding against these very real risks.
Exactly. And this naturally leads us to a really fascinating question. Beyond just the obvious desire to connect or be entertained, why are students drawn to social media in such profound ways? What's the deeper pull? The study grounds its understanding in some pretty compelling psychological and educational theories that help us understand these deeper motivations.
Okay, like what? What theories are we talking about?
Well, first, let's look at Bandura's social cognitive theory. This theory essentially says that we learn a great deal by observing and imitating others. It's social learning.
Okay.
So in the context of social media, if a student consistently sees their peers, say, sharing insightful articles, or maybe collaborating effectively on a group project using a shared online document, or even just managing their study schedule well using some social app, they're much more likely to adopt those positive academic behaviors themselves. They see it, they model it.
Okay. So observing positive behavior online can rub off.
Right. But conversely, if they see peers constantly distracted or procrastinating online, that can also become a learned behavior. It's about how those online role models, good or bad, subtly shape their approach to learning.
That's a powerful idea, learning by observation, even through a screen.
Okay.
And then you mentioned self-determination theory, or SDT.
Yes, SDT.
Can you give us a sense of how fulfilling those needs online, like autonomy or competence, might play out for a student, especially one trying to focus on studies?
Certainly. SDT suggests we all have these inherent psychological needs.
Hmm.
We need autonomy, which is feeling in control. We need competence, feeling effective and capable. And we need relatedness, feeling connected to others. These are fundamental drives.
Right. Autonomy, competence, relatedness.
Got it. So social media can become a really powerful way to fulfill these needs. A student might feel autonomous by choosing their own learning resources they find online, maybe curating their own study community. They might feel competent by getting validation or positive feedback on a shared project or an insightful comment they made. And of course, relatedness, connection, that's absolutely central to social platforms.
Sure.
Now, when these needs are met online, it can actually boost their academic engagement sometimes.
Mm.
But if they're only met online, maybe at the expense of offline activities or deep focus, then it can pull their focus away from traditional studies. It's a balance thing.
Okay, that makes sense. It can help or hinder depending on how it meets those needs.
Exactly. And finally, the third one mentioned is the uses and gratifications theory. This framework sort of flips the perspective. It suggests that individuals aren't just passive recipients of media, like sponges soaking it up. Instead, we actively seek out media to satisfy specific needs or desires.
So we're using the media for a purpose.
Precisely. Students aren't just scrolling aimlessly, according to this theory. They are consciously, or maybe subconsciously, using social media to actively seek out information. Or, for entertainment, obviously, for social interaction, that relatedness piece again. And crucially, for expressing their identity, who they are, who they want to be. It's about their active choice and the specific gratifications, the satisfactions they're seeking from that platform.
Wow, that's incredibly insightful. It really makes you stop and think. If you, our listener, think about your own online habits for just a moment, do any of these theories resonate with your motivations for using social media? It really helps us understand the deeper drive behind engagement, doesn't it? It goes way beyond just checking likes or killing time.
Absolutely. It gives us a framework for the why.
Okay, so understanding the motivations, the theories, the broad landscape, that's one thing. But how did this specific study we're focusing on actually measure these effects? Let's dive into their methodology. How did they approach finding this stuff out?
Right, the how. Well, the researchers used a descriptive survey research design,
Mm.
which is a very effective way to capture, current attitudes and behaviors on a topic like this. Their data collection was quite robust, actually. They used a mix of methods. There were survey questionnaires, which they administered using Google Forms, making it accessible. But they also did observations and interviews, which adds richer qualitative data. And of course, they did a thorough review of existing literature on the topic. So this multi-pronged approach aimed to paint a really comprehensive picture, not just numbers.
Okay, surveys, observations, interviews, and who did they talk to? What was the sample like?
For their sample, they had 60 actively involved social media users volunteer. These were students from Adamu Augie College of Education, and the data was collected during the second semester of the 2023-2024 academic year, so it's recent. The researchers made sure to get a balanced sample, exactly 30 female and 30 male students, and they represented diverse academic disciplines, not just one field.
60 students, balanced sample. How did they arrive at that number?
Ah, good question. It's worth noting they actually calculated the sample size carefully using something called Sloven's formula. They started with a larger WhatsApp group of 71 students, and the formula confirmed 60 was the appropriate number for statistical validity. So it wasn't just an arbitrary number.
Right, so some statistical rigor there. And once they had all this rich data, how did they analyze it?
Well, all that data, the survey responses, the interview notes, observation notes, it was meticulously transcribed first. Then it was categorized, and they analyzed it using inductive methods, which basically means they were looking for patterns, themes, and sub-themes emerging directly from what the students said and did,
Right.
rather than imposing preset categories. And for the quantitative parts, the survey data, they used standard statistical tools like mode and average weighted mean to process the numbers.
Okay, solid methodology. So the big question, what did they actually find? What did they discover about how students are really spending their time on these platforms? And what are the main drivers getting them to log on day after day?
Yeah, the findings offer some pretty clear insights into student behavior. First off, access. A striking 93% of the student respondents reported having affordable internet access. And primarily, they're accessing it through their smartphones.
93%. Wow.
Yeah. That statistic alone just underscores how fundamental connectivity is for today's students. It's not a luxury item, it's just a given part of life.
Absolutely.
And when it came to the primary motives for using social media, the results were particularly telling. Communication emerged as the clear leader. That was cited by 35% of respondents.
Okay, connection. That makes sense.
Yeah, it speaks right back to that fundamental human need for relatedness we discussed with SDT. Interestingly, though, entertainment followed very closely behind. That accounted for 29.5% of usage.
Almost 30% just for entertainment.
And then, perhaps most surprisingly for some people listening, seeking educational information came in at a really solid 25.5%.
Wow, over a quarter are using it actively for educational info. That's significant.
It is significant. So communication first, then entertainment, then education.
It's incredibly illuminating, isn't it? While communication is the clear number one, entertainment is almost neck and neck with seeking educational information. This really just underscores the multifaceted nature of how students are engaging with social media. It's not just an academic tool, nor is it just a leisure tool. It's this blend of personal needs, social needs, and educational needs, all wrapped up in one digital experience.
Exactly. It's truly integrated into the whole student life, not just one part of it.
Okay, so given all these nuanced findings, the undeniable good parts, the significant challenges, those compelling underlying motivations, what are the actionable takeaways? What can we actually do with this information? The paper concludes with a pretty comprehensive set of recommendations, right, for both institutions and students themselves.
Yes, indeed. The recommendations are quite practical and really geared towards creating a more constructive digital environment, not just pointing fingers. For students specifically, the paper strongly suggests implementing structured time management techniques. Things like using digital wellness apps or setting specific study blocks where devices are off or limited.
Okay, practical tips for students. What else?
It also emphasizes nurturing digital literacy skills. So teaching students how to critically evaluate the information they find online, how to navigate online spaces safely and ethically. Crucially, there's a call to provide support for balancing online and offline activities, helping them find that equilibrium, and advocating for better utilization of social media platforms for purely educational content. And finally, promoting responsible online conduct as like a core competency for modern life.
So it's really about empowering students with agency and skills.
Exactly. It's about agency. And then for the institutions and the policymakers, the big call is for collaboration. This means educational institutions, policymakers, even the tech firms themselves, they need to work together.
A united front, basically.
Kind of, to formulate clear guidelines and policies. The ultimate goal is to encourage healthy social media use, making sure it supports, rather than detracts from, academic goals and student well-being. This isn't a problem that can be solved by one group alone. It really needs a systemic, collaborative approach.
That makes sense. It really shifts the focus, doesn't it, from just identifying a problem to proactively creating solutions and strategies, which is something we know many of our listeners are really eager to explore. So we've navigated this complex digital landscape of higher education today. We've explored how social media profoundly shapes academic life, from fostering vital collaboration and building community to posing those very real risks of dependency and distraction. And all of this, as we've discussed, backed by solid research and those interesting theoretical frameworks.
Yeah, and if we just, connect this to the bigger picture for a second. It's abundantly clear that social media isn't some fleeting trend. It's not going away. It's an integral and constantly evolving part of the whole learning ecosystem now. The real challenge, and I think maybe the greatest opportunity here, lies not in trying to ignore it or ban these platforms, because that likely won't work, but in deeply understanding why students use them, understanding those motivations we talked about. It's about designing educational environments, teaching strategies that intelligently leverage social media strengths, while proactively mitigating its weaknesses. It really demands thoughtful integration, not exclusion.
Thoughtful integration. That sums it up well. Okay, so for you, our listener, here's maybe a final thought to mull over as we wrap up. Considering that students primarily use social media for communication, number one, and entertainment, number two, followed really closely by seeking educational information. How might educational technology and maybe even our teaching approaches be reimagined? How can we inherently tap into those fundamental needs for connection and engagement that clearly drive usage? How do we turn potential digital distractions into seamlessly integrated, genuinely powerful learning tools? Something to think about. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.